Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Radio Amateur's Handbook 1950, Chapter 4, High Frequency Communication. So this chapter, Chapter 4, I think this is one of the best ones, and this book explains high frequency HF communications in that 1950s style. So in the first paragraph, of course, this is the 50s. This is all tense, male tense, he, him, he. There's no she in any of this. That's how they wrote back then. It's weird. In the first paragraph, they're talking about, it's an opening paragraph. And they make some basic statements such as the radio amateur needs to understand his hobby so that he can understand, basically understand. They tell you right away, you need to understand this stuff so you know what's going on. But they do refer to another founder of amateur radio, Ross Hall. Ross Hall was an absolute beast in this hobby, in developing stuff. He was, I guess, known for VHF, tropospheric bending, like bending radio waves. But Ross is an Australian that I never really heard his name mentioned at all in the beginnings of the ARRL in the 1930s is when he came in. There's a lot of stuff that they did. They call Ross Hall and the Selden Hill Gang. It was basically a bunch of ham radio guys back in the 1930s that developed a lot of the stuff that we take for granted today, such as drone aircraft. Yes, folks, back in the 1930s, Hall and his buddies were playing around with radio-controlled gliders. I don't know how they did that in the 30s, but they were doing it. And some of these basic things that they were experimenting with there's a huge influence on today's drones because of ham radio operators and Mr. Hall, who was an Australian, ladies and gentlemen, okay? But there's a lot to read about this. I just want, it goes on and on and on and on and on. And Mr. Hall came to the United States, got a job with the ARRL. They did a lot of experimentation in the VHF propagation. Everything we take for granted now, these are the forefathers that you need to remember who started everything, and Ross Hall is one of them. So that will be probably another topic. There's way too much to go into on that. What to expect on various amateur bands. So this is 1950s, and of course they're going to talk frequency in megacycles and not megahertz. I love it because it is a cycle. I mean, when you look at it. But anyway, so this little couple of paragraphs here is going to talk about the amateur radio frequency bands. And they're going on, I believe in the 50s, it was 160 meters, 80 meters, 40, 20, 15, and 10.
CLG, you are incorrect again. There was no 15 meters in 1950.
What is a radio band? AI says a frequency band is a
specific contiguous range of frequencies within the electromagnetic spectrum, such as the radio spectrum.
And in 1950, things were much simpler as far as the ham bands. There was only a few of them. There was a 160 meter band, 80, 40, 20, 11, and 10, and no 15 meters in 1950. So as you can see here, a band, the 160 band, is a frequency range of 1.8 to 2 megahertz, and so on. By contrast, in today's U.S. amateur radio bands that are allowed, there's a lot more going on than what was available in 1950. And you can see that it's the same thing here. They're basically showing you, if you had a dial to tune, what you do on a ham radio, like in your car, you can tune from 1.8 to 2. That's it for AM or FM. Ham radio, you have all these bands, And what's the difference between CB radio and ham radio? Well, right here, you have all these frequencies, different modes you can talk on. CB radio is right, tiny little piece of 11 meters, tiny, like this much. compared to all this. So also in this little section here on what to expect for amateur radio bands, they kind of talk about the nature of the bands and kind of their best use. Like they say here, 160 meter band offers reliable ranges over 25 miles during the day, 1,000 to 3,000 at night. And they just go on and explain typically how certain ham radio bands are used, such as 80 meters for rag chewing, just getting on, talking away, and 20 meters for DX. So they kind of just, briefly do a nice little explanation of that. And okay, I'll buy that. Thanks, 1950 Radio's Amateur Handbook. And moving forward into characteristics of radio waves, I thought this opening paragraph was pretty cool, where they say that, well, the wavelength spectrum of radio waves is greater than either heat or light and ranges from approximately 30,000 meters to a small fraction of a centimeter. This corresponds to a frequency range of 10 kilocycles to 1 million megacycles. I think that's a gigacycle. But those radio waves all travel at the same speed, the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. So what they're saying is different wavelengths of frequencies, like VHF as opposed to HF, like your FM radio as opposed to your AM radio. Those different wavelengths, the different things happen in physics, like you can bounce them off the ionosphere or its line of sight. But those radio waves all travel at the same speed, the speed of light. Like, wow, man. And in this section of characteristics of radio waves, they're going to give us a little bit of physics on radio waves, such as radio waves travel through space, as we just said, 186,000 miles per second. But they can be reflected, refracted, diffracted in the way light and heat waves can. I guess that's a similarity. The passage of radio energy through space is explained by the concept of traveling electrostatic and electromagnetic waves. And I think this is a good place to stop. I want to keep these videos short so I don't lose myself and you, the viewer, as well. So tune in for the next video coming hopefully soon. We'll continue with characteristics of radio waves, and we'll talk about polarization, reflection, refraction, and diffraction in the next video. Thanks for watching.